Hey friends, welcome back. This is day 14 of our 25-day Christmas Advent watercolor paint along. And today we're going to be painting some beautifully lit candles with a little bit of greenery and cranberries around them. So before we jump in, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the rest of the series, and go ahead and tap the like button if you're painting along with me today. It really helps this video reach more people. So let's grab your supplies, get your paper ready, and let's start with a simple sketch. All right, I'm gonna draw a few ellipses here. I'm gonna vary the heights so we can have some nice visual interest. I'm gonna make 3 candles. They're kind of like pillar candles. If you prefer tracing to freehanding, I always have a template on my website available to you. So don't feel like you have to freehand if that is just not your strong suit, or maybe you're in a rush and you don't want to freehand. You just want to trace. All right, I've put in the bowl that we're gonna have our, sometimes you need to just change the general shape of it a little bit. All right, I've got the bowl for our arrangement here, and I notice the foot of my bowl is a little bit off. So we're gonna change it. And this is why some people don't prefer sketching, freehanding to tracing, because you might make some mistakes. All right, I'm gonna add in the pillar part of my candle, and then we will get started. All right, I'm gonna add just a couple cranberries in here. I like to make them an odd number, just because visually that seems to, it's more pleasing to the eye to have a nice odd number. All right, and then I'm gonna add just a couple of sprigs, branches where I'm gonna have some greenery coming out. All right, I'm not gonna draw in the needles of these now. I'm gonna do that later with the paint. So let's get our paints activated. And I have some green that I used yesterday with the hot chocolate that I'm going to be using in our Evergreen. So let's go ahead and get started with this. So we're gonna start with some Van Dyke Brown, and we're gonna have, there's gonna be a lot of different shadows going on here. These are gonna be white pillar candles, and white is kind of a funny color to try and paint. Your brain registers it as white, but then when you actually go in and look at an object as you're painting it, there is so many different colors and variations in those white objects that sometimes your brain takes a minute to try and figure out how to translate that onto the painting. So we're going to use some softer colors here, and we're going to make one side of our candle a warmer color. with warmer little shadows, and then the other side will make a much cooler shadowing with some Payne's Gray. Now, you want this Payne's Gray to be fairly diluted, and we're just using little touches with these. We don't want to color in the whole candle pillar, and use a clean damp brush to soften those shadows. All right, now because they're lit, you're going to get that warm glowy effect from the candle. So we're going to have a little bit of, let's see, right behind the candle is where you're going to have a nice warm glowy effect. And we're going to add in some, let's see, yellow ochre back here, and then I'm going to add just a little drop of the burnt sienna around it to help create that warm glowy look. And use your damp clean brush to just soften those edges and bring those together real nicely. Again, this side of the candle, we're going to get our warmer shadows in, and because we've got this other candle in front of it, we're going to have a bit of a shadow here, casting shadow from the candle here in front on the one in the back. A little bit of that Payne's Gray here. Now, I did paint over the entire portion of in front of where the flame is going to be. We will add that flame back in just a little bit. But first, we're going to get our other colors in here. All right, get that third pillar candle in here. And I am going behind the evergreen branches that we're going to put in. Those greens are going to be much darker and stronger to not be affected by those little shadows that we're putting in there. Getting that Van Dyke brown again to get this part of the candle. And then we have a nice glowy effect from the candle that's lit here. Just that glowing of kind of coming through the candle almost. I'm going to use a little bit of burnt orange here. You don't want something that's super colorful. You want something that's going to have a more muted tone to it. So like the yellow ochres, the burnt orange, burnt sienna, just touches of it are going to help create a nice glowy look without being cartoony. All right, getting that last bit of Van Dyke brown in here for that shadow. And a little bit of the shadow up here around that part of the pillar. All right. Excuse me. Next, we're going to work on the foot of our bowl down here. And this is actually, I thought about making this glass, but I think it's going to be easier if we just make it a solid color, because trying to put all those things in a glass bowl here is going to be a little bit challenging. So trying to make this a little bit more beginner friendly. So we'll just go with a solid color, and we will use a nice gray color to help create some shadows. We're just going to make it a white bowl, and we have the shadows mostly on this side over here. And remember, this bowl has some thickness to it, so you're going to need to leave a little bit of an edge to show that thickness in there. And we're going to put our darkest shadows over here on the left side of our dish, and then on the underneath side, and then slowly with a clean brush soften those shadows up. And then we'll add just a little bit more over here. Like the light is coming from this direction. It's not from the side. It's not straight on. We want it coming from, you know, kind of an angle here. All right, and then we'll go in and get the foot here. Again, your darker side's gonna be over here. And we'll get the little bit of the detail shortly after this dries a little bit. We want to just lay down our initial shadows, and because the light is coming from this direction, we want to make sure we leave the front little edge of this foot nice and bright. We're going to go and take our really small brush though and give it just the littlest line down here. Like it's not floating in the air. If you haven't noticed from this series, I don't like levitating objects. We want to make sure that they have a nice grounding to them. They're not floating. Just softly blend those out. have a nice little dish there. We'll go back with a little bit of a darker line after this has had a bit of a chance to dry to get that defining little edge between the main body of the bowl and the foot. All right, next we're going to get our little wicks in, and you're going to use your little teeny brush, and we're going to use some Van Dyke brown. Get back over there. All right, and we're just going to make this little wick, the very bottom of the wick as it burns in a candle. If you ever look at that, it's real dark, and then you have your bright white flame right around that. So that's what we're gonna do. And then we want to make a nice little glowy effect around our candles, the other two. So this one has a nice little glowy effect, and we want to add that to these two as well. So I'm just going to paint a circle. It's about a $50 size around these two wicks. And then I'm going to go in, I'm going to start with a warm yellow right in the center. And then I'm going to move into a yellow ochre ring around that. We don't want it to look super bright. You don't need to use a super concentrated amount of paint here. We want it to give a nice soft glow. After that, I'm going to use a little bit of my burnt orange and just get a ring around that yellow ochre. And if they don't seem to be blending very well, you can always go in with your damp, clean brush and just gently work them until you have a nice glow that softly fades into that that circle of water that we added. Start in the center and work your way out. We want to do that. We want to work our way out because as you get into your darker colors, we don't want that to move into that brighter area. We want to keep that brighter yellow, that color, instead of getting more muted as the color moves towards the outer part of the circle. All right, now we have a nice little candle glow here, and let's work on our cranberries. Now, if you've done the cranberry and popcorn garland, you know, these were super easy and fun little berries to do. So we're going to start with a scarlet red. I'm using a small brush that comes to a nice point. And we're going to leave a little spot on each berry that is unpainted because we want that nice little shiny reflection to show on each one. And I am not being, I'm not doing the same pattern on each of these. I'm doing something just a little bit on all of them. We're leaving that shiny spot towards the light source. The same on all of them because the light is coming from the same direction towards all of them. So it might change depending on where the berry is, where your light source is going to be hitting at. All right, now I've added the scarlet to all of those. I'm going to go in with a little bit of crimson, touch some crimson in on all of them, and then we will finish up with a touch of fuchsia, which is really fun. I love these cranberries because they are just so colorful and bright. They just kind of make me happy. All right, let's get that fuchsia and drop that in. I'll finish filling in any white spots that are left with this fuchsia. All right. Now let's go back and get that little bit of that defining line between our bowl and the foot of our bowl here. All right, let's get some twigs for our evergreen branches here. I'm going to use a medium brown, and I'm just going to lightly pull in these little branches. Red is notorious for bleeding quite easily, so it's not going to ruin your painting by any means. It's kind of the charm of watercolor. But if you do not want any red in your branches, just be sure to steer clear of accidentally touching any of your cranberries. All right, I just put in a thin line of medium brown there, and I am going to add in next. I'm going to start with a somewhat diluted olive green. I don't want it too concentrated. We're going to add some more dimension and color in later, deeper tones. And I'm just going to start by gently pulling into this pine branch. Now you're going to want to go over part of the branch, and just be careful of the candles. If you don't want this branch to be in front of either of these candles or get any red pulled into it, just be patient as you work here and stay behind that candle with your green paint. And I'm going to get just a little bit in here I'm just kind of gently filling in the space. And if you need to turn your paper so you can get at the angles a little better, by all means do that. I'm going to add just a touch of that deep green. This is a little bit of a hooker's green, or like a deep green mixed with a little bit of black that I used last night as the background in the hot cocoa. All right, I'm gonna get a little bit more tones put into this. I wanna work with this. Every once in a while you can get some of these colors to bleed together, and it makes just the prettiest little transition colors. Sometimes you don't work with them quite quickly enough to get that, but getting my more diluted sap or olive green again, and these are just long, quick, gentle strokes that I'm using with this green. Can come in right away if you want to get a little bit more of that bleed effect between your two greens. You can always come in with a little more deeper tones of your olive green and just work them together. Work back and forth between your greens and until you find a color pattern variation that you like the best. Now, some of your greens can totally spill over the edge of the bowl and go in front of your little branch as well. So I'm just working my way from one branch to the next. I'm switching up my greens here and there, just grabbing whatever one. I'm starting out with the lighter green and then adding in the deeper ones as I go through the little branches. Don't load up your brush too much or you might get, this is a little thick for my liking, but sometimes it just is what it is. Working my way down the branches. All right, let's get this last one. I probably should have started with this. I'm going to suggest, if you are right-handed, work from the left to the right. And if you're left-handed, work right to left. I am right-handed, so I naturally want to rest my hand All right, let's get that little flame in our candles painted. Now I'm going to use my Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. You don't need very much. Again, start up here on the opposite side of your dominant hand. And we're going to make just that little tongue of flame here. All right. Finally, what we're gonna do is add just a little bit of a tabletop underneath here, or underneath our bowl, to give it something to rest on. So I'm gonna go in with my medium brown and start by outlining the bowl. I'm not using a super concentrated paint. I want to be able to add some depth as I go. So we're going to start by outlining the bowl and then sweep out at equal heights on either side. And then underneath your bowl is going to be shadowed, just like we had the shadow. It's going to have just a little bit under the very, very foot of it. And then our light source is coming from this direction. So we're going to have just the littlest bit of shadow over here and a much heavier shadow over on this side as our bowl is casting its shadow over here. You can even go in with some of that Van Dyke brown to help deepen that shadow there. And then clean your brush and swipe it wet. Let's start with the lighter sides here. I am swiping mostly the clean area of my paper and just letting the tips of the bristles agitate that brown color just a bit. And we'll add a little bit more of the lighter brown, that medium brown out there, so we can have a even looking table. All right. Excuse me. And that is it for the candles. And I'm going to sign my name down at the bottom like I always do. I'm just going to use my initials this time because that table is kind of, see, red bleeds a lot. Well, I just wanted to share a quick Bible verse with you. It comes from Isaiah chapter 9, verse 2. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them a light has shone. And I just hope that you guys are enjoying this season where we tend to have a lot of lights and just remembering Jesus come into the world as the light of the world. And thank you for joining me. That wraps up day 14 of our 25-day Advent watercolor paint along. If you enjoyed painting these candles with me, I'd love for you to leave a comment below and tell me how it went or what your favorite part was. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you can join me for the rest of the Advent series. And if you're looking for templates, private classes, or live painting sessions, you can find all of that on my website. I will see you tomorrow for day 15. See you then.